Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you what to expect from the upcoming Letter from the Producer Live number 89 for Final Fantasy XIV. This live letter is going to be our Part 1 preview of patch 7.4, and I know not everybody keeps up with what we expect from any given patch. I, however, spend way too much time doing just that, so I'm going to make sure you know exactly what to expect. It's not saying that this is what is going to be in the live letter in its entirety, but at the very least you have a baseline knowledge of what may or may not appear in this upcoming live letter. So without further ado, let's get into it. So for Part 1 live letters, we usually get maybe the name of the patch as well as an artwork. Sometimes we don't even get one or either of those, but we do usually get a release window, not a release date. Now, it's one of three things that they usually say: early in a month, the middle of a month, or late in a month. And that is because in Japan, they often break the months into thirds, early meaning the first 10 days, the middle meaning the middle 10 days, and late meaning all remaining days in the month. So because we get patches on Tuesdays, it's pretty easy to derive when a patch may or may not be. If they say early December, I would expect no earlier than December 9th. But quite frankly, it would follow pattern for them to say middle of December and for the patch to release on December 16th. That comes with a lot of implications, especially if you are a raider, but we are definitely not hoping for the late December release, especially given its proximity to both Christmas and then eventually 1 week later, New Year, which is both of which are very, very important holidays, especially in Japan. Now, as for the actual content, there's a whole bunch of basic stuff. Even if you're not someone who's super in the know, you've probably come to expect these next several things I'm going to rattle off. Our main scenario for patch 7.4 will have a focus on teasing the new story in 8.0. So we will get our first look at a new direction. Dawn Trail's story has been incredibly divisive. Some people like it, some people really, really hate it. And so the promise of something new in a direction that we will be going, while we have had a teaser or two leading up to this point, this will be a much more focused kind of directive to get us to really wonder and ask questions about what we will be doing in patch 8.0. Of course, as part of the MSQ, on top of the quests themselves, we usually get a new dungeon, and then our expert roulette is going to move over to the two most recent dungeons, patch 7.3 and 7.4. Listen, one day, I just want us to go back to having 3 dungeons in that expert roulette. Please, I don't even do it very much, but I just want that third dungeon. That's why I moved away from doing it in the first place. On top of that, we usually get a new trial, with the normal mode being part of the main scenario, and the extreme being able to be unlocked after that. The extreme in an even-numbered patch is normally a pretty significant item level upgrade for most people, as it will be equal to the raid weapon from the previous tier. Actually, I don't even think that's entirely right. It should be 5 item levels over crafted, if memory serves. So that's actually even more over that. It's 10 item levels over the previous raid tier. I guess even in my old age, sometimes I get the numbers wrong too. But the extreme weapon will be incredibly valuable, especially if you plan on going into the new raid tier. We will be getting the final Arcadian raid tier and the finale to that story with the heavyweight tier when December 16th hits, if that's when the patch, I should say when patch 7.4 hits, predicted for December 16th. Now, the big concern is that Savage is 1 week separated from normal mode and has been for quite some time, at least when it's on the non-expansion specific patches, where those are usually 2 weeks apart. That would mean that Savage would be on December 23rd, which is not fantastic for some people. And if they do the patch a week later, then it would be on December 30th. Some people think maybe they'll delay Savage, try to get it away from the holidays. I really don't think they're going to do that, but whether or not they do, that's what we're going to find out. They'll say something specific if they plan on breaking pattern with that. So if they say nothing, assume that it's just going to be that 1 week separation. This will be the final Savage tier of the expansion, and while this isn't planned for patch 7.4, they have already confirmed they were working on an ultimate for patch 7.5, with a goal of being released in 7.5x. Now, the goal is obviously them saying, you know, we're aiming for that, but we're all a little nervous whether or not they'll make it. The last time they tried to do an ultimate in the 7.5x patch, it didn't go so great. Granted, the circumstances were very, very different. but I know everyone's a little on edge. But this Savage gear, in theory, should be incredibly important if you wish to do that final Savage, or that final ultimate fight in this expansion. Now, there's also a bunch of other cleanup stuff. A new weekly capped tombstone, with the old tombstone becoming uncapped, and the even older tombstone being discontinued, even though you can usually exchange it for tomes, which you'll probably use to make all your new crafted combat gear. Yeah, because we're going up an item level, that means new crafted combat gear, which will release with the normal mode. So if you plan on doing Savage, you do have a week to get it crafted, meld it, do all that good stuff. We should also be getting job changes for both PvE and PvP, and quite frankly, 0.4 patches are normally when the last big job changes can happen, if at all. We know they're planning something pretty major for 8.0. I don't think it'll be as major as everyone else does, but of course I'm open to being surprised when we eventually get some of the job changes revealed, although we're quite a while away from that actually happening. But yeah, job changes for both PvE and PvP. And then some other things you can expect to hear about. Zamiel Darkhold is going to get its duty support plus dungeon rework, and there's going to be probably various graphical updates to unupdated gear. They may not even bother to mention some of this stuff. They'll probably mention Zamiel, but those are like all the things for certain that we know are part of like the core patch of what will actually drop on the 7.4 day. Anything in addition to that would be a welcome surprise. And I might even be missing a few things, some smaller things. I know some people are expecting a new what are they called? As custom delivery, because we didn't get one in 7.3, so they might be thinking maybe we'll get it in 7.4. That might be 7.4x. But anything in addition to these things on the 7.4 day, consider them welcome surprises. This, of course, doesn't factor in any other random quality of life that we may get as well. Now, that's not all the content for 7.4. X, but 7.4x is a term that stretches between usually 4 to 9 weeks after the initial release, with 0.41 being most likely 4 weeks out from the initial patch, and 7.45 being 9 weeks out from the initial patch. There is some variance in there. Sometimes it's 5 weeks instead of 4 weeks. Sometimes it's 8 weeks instead of 9 weeks, but that's like the rough expectation you should have. But what's going to be in those things? Well, for starters, we will be getting another new cosmic exploration planet, most likely in 7.41. We will be getting a new occult crescent update, but not a new zone. We'll be getting 3, I believe, new phantom jobs, which you will be able to level and power up. Now, I would hope they would also do some other quality of life. I know some people are really hoping they'll maybe do a normal mode for the Fort Tower, but we know that they're planning a normal mode for the next one. And I think their efforts are going to be largely on that and not on the existing one, which I don't agree with, but that's just what my prediction is. But anything additional on top of just the phantom jobs being added would be a surprise, because that's all we know for absolute certain. We do also know we'll be getting new combat relic stages, most likely at the same time as those phantom job updates. I don't expect it to largely take place in Occult Crescent, very similar to 7.3x. I think that it will be asking us to do an older activity repeatedly for a one-time step followed by tombstones. I think we can all pretty much agree that we expect tombstones from every single step at this point. I'm not going to get into my usual discussion. There's also going to be new crafting and gathering relic tool stages through Cosmic Exploration, which will release at the same time as Cosmic Exploration. We will, of course, get new Hildebrand at some point, but in terms of other activities that are like kind of the norm for usual patches, this is where you kind of, again, start to wonder about custom deliveries or other side quests we may get, because we're well past the point where we start getting, beast tribes or allied society quests at this point. We've already gotten all the ones we expect for the expansion. We wouldn't get a combined one in this patch, most likely. So that leaves a lot of room for the other contents. Now, speaking of other contents, there's one thing I left for last, and that is the new variant dungeon. Now, variant dungeons were introduced back in Endwalker, and they are basically a choose-your-own-way dungeon, where there's usually 12 different paths and ways to complete the dungeons, each with different bosses and boss mechanics. It's usually a little bit cryptic, and you actually have to read a lot of the in-game clues to figure out how to unlock all 12 paths, including the secret 12th path, which usually has its own unique boss and is required in order to actually complete the story, or you let someone else solve it and just Google a guide. One of the two, actually, is what ends up happening. But the new variant dungeon is going to be interesting. Variant, while cool in concept, definitely had its fair share of feedback in Endwalker, as it lacked a good reason to play it repeatedly past doing the 12 paths, unless you wanted some of the glam-specific stuff in there, and even then, those 12 clears were often enough to get absolutely everything. This was also paired with Criterion, which was basically an extreme to savage level version of the dungeon bosses that you would fight as you ventured through the majority of those 12 paths. Usually the secret boss was missing, hopefully they remedy that here. And then Criterion Savage, which was the Criterion dungeon, but everything hits even harder, the trash mobs hit way harder, certain AoEs aren't visible, and if anyone dies, they cannot be resurrected. So you have to do the entire dungeon in a set time limit, usually about 20-something minutes, and also not die the entire time. It's basically like an ultimate dungeon in a sense, and that had its own problems as well. Now, all of these had reward structure issues. People wanted side grades from gear, people wanted just better rewards in general, and even though the fights were really cool, it just, every part of this suffered from it being separated from the regular duty finder with the VNC finder. And we know that there is going to be some sort of major update to the way variant is handled. They said that the variant dungeon will have something not too dissimilar from the quantum feature that was just introduced along with Pilgrim's Traverse for that singular encounter. Now, we don't know if this applies specifically to the Criterion difficulty. We don't know if it's something you'll just do to the variant dungeon to make the dungeon itself harder. We have no idea. So this is going to be something that we are learning just brand new. I'm still not convinced on the whole quantum idea, at least not the way they executed it in the previous contents, but I'm curious to see what they have planned for that. And while they probably won't go too much into detail in the Part 1 live letter, they will at least talk about this at some point. Now, those are the things that we know we're seeing, we just don't know all the details about. Then we have what I call the maybe category. Things that we are really expecting and quite frankly have waited for a pretty long time and will maybe be there, and if they're not, it's definitely going to get some groans from the community. Number one is the Raid Planner. The Raid Planner is basically supposed to be an in-game way of showcasing all the strategies for a fight, very similar to the actual Raid Plan website, but built into the game. They said that they had enough of it done to actually release it prior to this patch, and it's been something they've talked about since before 7.0 even released, and we thought it was a 7.0 feature. But they said that, quite frankly, if they released it as they had initially finished it, it would have been a disaster, kind of. It just couldn't compete with the actual Raid Plan website. And if they're going to make the feature, they might as well make sure it does everything imaginable, including being able to at least share it between you and your party members and whatnot. So we may see the Raid Planner. And quite frankly, if it's not in this patch, I'll consider it a failure of Dawntrail, because this is the Savage tier. Like, yes, they could have it in time for Ultimate, but you want it in time for the Savage tier. You want it available a week before the Savage Encounters release, right on patch 7.4. So that's something I'm really hoping to see. There's also the interior housing designs, or the interior housing sizes, what you may hear the community collectively call TARDIS housing, where even if you have a small house, your interior can be small, medium, or large to meet all of your needs. This was planned for like 7.1 or 7.2, and they've been largely silent about it since then, and we're hoping to get more news about it here. And then finally, the Blue Mage level 90 update. We know we're getting Beastmaster in this expansion, but we were also promised that Blue Mage would get its level 90 update, and this is kind of the last smart opportunity to take to release it. Now, that being said, I think they have completely mistargeted Blue Mage's updates. Its initial release and even its first update were kind of okay, but they've moved away from what I think Blue Mage initially was maybe intended to be, as a class that could do things like largely solo, had a lot of open world utility, and just kind of broke the game in a lot of really funny ways. And it's kind of become just an alternate rating job for a set of limited achievements. So, I mean, I'm expecting a few new spells, one new Mass Carnival plus story quests, new achievement for clearing the raids up to and through Pandemonium, but I really hope they maybe surprise us. I don't think they will. I think my predictions for that are going to be spot on, but I really think they missed the mark on Blue Mage, and I'm hoping they don't miss it on Beastmaster. Now, speaking of Beastmaster, the final category is the not happening category, at least based on information that we already have that's publicly available. And I only have two things on this list that I think reasonably need to be mentioned. Number one is Beastmaster. That has already been confirmed for 7.5x, so there's no reason to expect it in 7.4x. I also think it'd be weird to release it before for the Blue Mage level 90 update. And it's why I think this is really the last opportunity for the Blue Mage update. Do you really want to do both Blue Mage and Beastmaster in the same like 0.5x cycle? I don't think that's a good idea in all honesty. And I don't think the two will interact with each other very much at all either. And also, no new Occult Crescent Zone. I know I mentioned it earlier, but that was officially planned for 7.5x, where we will also get the second Forked Tower raid, which, thanks to the feedback from the community, will actually have a normal mode version. So if you're not a hardcore raider, but you want to experience the story and you want to experience the actual dungeon itself, the bosses, all that stuff, you will have the option to do so. So thankfully, feedback does go heard some of the time. That is everything that I could think of when I was making this video. There might be some other details. I'm not big in like the crafting and gathering space. So other than the custom deliveries, it's hard for me to super keep track of what to expect from that. As far as I know, we have all of the crafter and gatherer gear other than the upgraded tools. And I'm also not super keen on what they might be doing with PvP either. I think PvP is very much when they announce something, it's happening. I'm still waiting for the Astrologos map to come back. I'm still waiting for a Rival Wings, like actual queue, like daily bonus queue, so people might actually do it outside of specific events or the Mog Tome event. I'm also I wouldn't be surprised again to see something else with you know, ranked PvP or something. They did just do the Omega and Ultimate tier as well as the new map, but you never know. They've been supporting it with like new stuff pretty frequently. So I'm curious to see what they may have in that regard as well. But those are the things to expect from the upcoming Letter from the Producer live at number 89. Let me know what you're excited for in the comment section of the video below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will keep you up to date on what actually comes out of this live letter after it airs bright and early Friday morning. So with that, thanks for watching. I'll see all of you in the next one, and until then, take care.